And we are good to go. Well, first off, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Jay, for jumping on with us. We're a smaller syndicate out in Seattle, but we have some incredible people, and we're really excited about the racing season this year. And can't thank you enough to have such a wonderful Hall of Famer like yourself. I mean, truly, if I looked at the list and just named off everything you've done, we'd be here for a couple hours. So
well, go ahead. I don't mind.
Oh man, and Dad will be co-hosting today. Thanks for being here with me, Dad. And no, we're really excited. There's a couple of people trickling in here, and just gonna make sure I have people here, and we're all good to go. So Jay, I mean, for everyone who doesn't know, Jay, how would you describe Jay, Dad?
Oh, he's a living legend. Is what Jay Hovdey is.
Now remember, I'm right here. So
Jay is a historian of the game. Has had his pen to the heartbeat of this game forever, and captures. He takes special moments and he makes them even more special, and has a way to cut through into the absolute beauty of the sport. And as a friend of mine said to me way back in the late 90s, he goes, after reading one of Jay's articles in the Racing Forum, he said, "Man, oh man, this guy just keeps knocking it out of the park with everything he writes." And that line stuck with me. And I think that's the best way to put Jay Hovdey. He sees things that other people maybe just don't see as clearly as Jay. So
that's pretty good way of putting it, that 100%. And Jay, it's pretty incredible because I've just known you my whole life. So I just remember seeing you just, oh, that's just Jay. And then people would be like, oh my gosh, you know Jay Hovdey? I said, oh yeah, Jay. And it was just been so cool to grow up with someone like you in the horse racing world that I've been so lucky enough to be a part of. But I think a good starting point, Jay, where I've started with recent people is you've been covering the sport for over 4 decades now.
Yep.
Yeah. And, I was just wondering, what was the moment early on that made you realize horse racing was it? It was going to be your life's work, and you weren't going to skip a beat thinking about anything else.
Well, I've never been quite that exclusive to thinking about other things. I have a wife and a daughter and a cat and a dog and one or two other very minor hobbies. But I'd probably look back on when I was quite young. And like most people, I imagine, on this call and your partnerships, it was a close relative that got me really involved in the game, and not consciously, just by exposure. And like a virus, you're exposed and it either infects you or it doesn't. And I was truly infected by my grandfather first, who was a sports nut in San Diego, took me to everything. I mean, pro wrestling back when it was really wrestling, boxing, agua caliente, dog races, old lane field for the Padres when they were good, things like that. And horse racing being a major league sport at that time, that was just a natural extension of the world that he exposed me to. And my dad became an enabler because I couldn't be with my grandfather all the time. So my dad would take us to Del Mar and Hollywood Park and Santa Anita as often as we could go. We were kind of like little country mice down in Orange County, California. A pretty good drive from the big city tracks, but we did make pilgrimages to the track. And I have scrapbooks. I listened to the replays, the recreations every night. There weren't replays; they were recreations. You probably recall Ronald Reagan's early career was to recreate football games by reading the ticker tape of play-by-play, and he would make it sound like he was calling the game live. Well, that's what these guys did on the radio. They would read the chart of the race and then they'd recreate a call. Listen to that every night, believing it was the real thing, and that's fine. And it just went from there. And kind of in a parallel universe, I was discovering that I could write a little bit and like the sound of what I wrote. You got to be pretty self-critical, but you also have to enjoy the process. Writing for me was, at first it was copying. You sit down at a typewriter, you put in a piece of onion skin paper, and you get a copy of the what was it called? American something, the Bound magazine. It was a beautiful, beautiful magazine. Maybe a story about Confederate generals or something like that, and I would just copy it. And I learned later that Ernest Hemingway did that as well when he was young, and what he was doing was replicating the act of creation without really knowing how to create yet, but at least the mechanics were something that fascinated him. And that's must have been what fascinated me as well, just sitting down and producing something, even though it wasn't original. Look at this, it's on the page, it's typed just like that book.
Mhm.
And that's kind of the way the virus kind of started and spread.
That is such a cool story, and your younger voice compared to your voice throughout your whole journey through um, being a writer. How has that changed? What was it like in your earlier years, your voice when writing?
Well, gosh, I'd have to go back and look at my old clips. I did exhume a couple of movie reviews that I did in college, and they weren't too juvenile. They weren't bad. I didn't really start writing about horse racing until I graduated from Arizona State University and went to work for the publicity departments in Southern California, and I got to do some writing that way. And eventually a couple of magazines, they thought, well, if we can get that, junior assistant on that publicity staff to write something for us, we don't have to pay him because he's already getting paid. So, there we go. And I got to see my name in print in a magazine that way. So it built from there. And, uh, um, when you're growing and understanding of the game and, are really kind of developing your chops as a writer at the same time. They just you hope they intersect at the right times. I had a wonderful mentor still with us, Dan Smith, who hired me at Santa Anita originally, and Dan gave me two very good pieces of information. He said, "Jay, get out of the office, get out of the press box, get on the backstretch, walk around, talk to people, introduce yourself, you know, uh, learn it from the ground up.
Mhm.
Watch the horses in their stalls on the walking ring, talk to trainers when they have time, introduce yourself to assistant trainers. You'll run into a couple of jockeys. It's invaluable." And the other thing that he told me basically, and you didn't get to apply this until a little bit later, but believe what you see. In other words, don't mystify things that don't need to be mystified, and trust your instincts once you've paid enough dues to have those instincts. And that's kind of been my guideposts ever since in terms of trying to communicate the sport to readers. I mean, the responsibility of the access I've had is I've always taken very seriously. I get to go places where even most owners don't get to go.
Mhm.
Um, and and it's more than behind the scenes. It's in the trenches. And I get to see the agonies and the ecstasies and the joys and the sorrows. I stand back from it, record it, and share it when it's appropriate and when I think that something I've seen can be entertaining, enlightening, or instructional to my readers.
Mhm.
And I would hope that any writer of sports or an industry that's a little bit odd like ours would adhere to. But that's kind of been my one or two commandments through the years.
When you are writing, Jay, for your readers, do you keep in mind who you're writing for in the sense of I'm I know there could be new fans that might be reading my material, and I know that there's guys that are in their 80s that have been reading my stuff forever and have their own opinions on racing and all that. How do you find that middle ground for both sides of the spectrum?
Well, I respect racing too much to ever dumb it down.
Sure.
You know, and for the most part, I've written for industry publications, whether it's the Thoroughbred Record or the Thoroughbred Times or Blood Horse or the Racing Form. You know, those readers already know the jargon, you know, so I don't have to do anything. I don't have to modify that vocabulary. But sometimes, you know, in the past, I have written for the LA Times and New York Times, Reader's Digest,
Mhm.
and I'll run into editors who say, what's a furlong? You know,
Sure.
basic stuff like that. What's a gelding? You know, how far is a mile? Just things like that. And so you do have to modify your you know, your approach depending on the you know, depending on your client as a writer. But even then, it's important to access that educational part of my responsibility to readers that may not know a lot about horse racing, but you've got to capture them with the story and the way you tell the story. And if they, you know, kind of hit a blip over a term or something, make sure they read over that and just keep going with the story.
Okay. That's well said. And you briefly, I hope I'm not taking up too much of what you want to ask
No,
or
no,
anything like
no,
that,
no,
but you briefly touched upon how you've been to certain places. Writing is taking you to certain beautiful places in racing, the highs and lows. And when you are taking to places like Saratoga, or you're taking overseas, or you're in Southern California, or you're back east, regional culture, do you see a difference in the culture of racing in these regions? And if so, what is it really like, the differences culturally?
Well, in the United States, it's uh, pretty homogenous. I mean, you know, you can wake up on just about any backstretch and know where you are.
Mhm.
Um, New Yorkers can be a little contemptuous of their California brethren, and we enjoyed playing with that through the years, but that's okay. They're that, you know, it's ever thus. But Californians, you know, had a right for many years to think that they were, you know, how the game was played. So I think what you do, you every time you travel someplace, you go into it with an open mind and a sense of adventure. And I'm going to see a lot of familiar stuff, but the real thrill is seeing what is different. When you go to Japan, certainly it's like going to a different racing culture altogether. Hong Kong, not quite so much. It's more like an English culture, but England is not like Ireland, and Ireland is not like France. So, you know, it's just a lot of fun to expose yourself to as many as many of those various atmospheres as you possibly can. And the great thing about it is the horses are are they're mobile. I mean, the way that we can put them on a plane these days and give them a good couple of jugs of fluid and they come hopping off airplanes better than we do.
Yeah.
And you know, we'll I guess we'll find out on Saturday between journalism and sovereignty which one traveled best to Oaklawn Park.
Yes, sir.
You know, that makes it all the more exciting when you see horses moving around and sharing their skills with local fans.
Jay, outside of the United States, what's been your favorite experience involved in racing in internationally?
Well, I'd have to probably say, um, I don't know. Ireland was quite a bit of fun. Went to the races at the Curragh. Just the whole scene in Ireland was quite just. I mean, it was just so warmly satisfying. I mean, got to visit Ballydoyle, Coolmore,
Mhm.
uh, my wife even put me on a horse on a cross country at a dude ranch in the middle of Ireland, so everywhere you turn, there was some reason to brush up against horses in one way or the other. Um, France, I went to when I was younger, and that was a great experience. I basically did a tour, kind of a one-star hotel tour of France, and went to as many race courses as I could possibly find. And that was terrific. I mean, you just, you walk in and there you are looking at Maurice Gilbert and Yves Saint Martin and Lester Piggott might have come over for a ride, those kinds of things, all the those heroes of racing literature that you never thought you'd get to see.
Was there one moment internationally that really sticks out to you? It was like, oh my gosh, I just saw something absolutely incredible, and that really stuck with you internationally.
You mean Cigar winning the 1996 Dubai World Cup?
There you go. That's
There'll never be a more exciting moment in racing, period. At least for me, it was otherworldly. Already you feel like you're on the far side of the moon, being in a place like Dubai, in United Arab Emirates. But I mean, the whole experience was, the windy mornings, the ruffling the mane of Belmont's white pony as he stood there staring off into the distance, and in the distance was a camel track on the other side of the grounds from Nado Sheba. The night itself, well, Burt Bacharach was there for starters. I mean, you can't top that. So he was there with his horse. Seeing, trainers like John Gosden and others in camel races, and returning with tales of the strangest saddle sores they'll ever have in their lives. The night itself of the race was, I guess it kind of began, the truly weird stuff began at around sundown, when there came time for the horses to come from the back saddling paddock into the main walking ring. Well, at that same time coincided with one of the hours of prayer for the Muslims in attendance. And so all of a sudden I'm looking down, I was just in the side of the grandstand, I'm looking down from the grandstand, and all these people bow in their prayer, but Cigar was walking through them at the same time. So I thought, oh, well, that makes sense. It's Cigar. I mean, we do that in America when he walks by. And then he went out and he ran that amazing race. And Burt Bacharach's horse, Soul of the Matter, tested him harder than he'd ever been tested during that incredible winning streak. Yeah. And so I descended, and everything's a hubbub, and I look up, and down from the top of the shakes boxes in the grandstand, here comes Burt Bacharach in a beautiful ice cream, mint blue suit, descending to meet his horse, because they honored the second and third place horses almost as much as the first place horse, and tears are just streaming down his face. He's so elated, and I mean, I don't think he did a song about it, but he sure could have. So does that answer your question, Jeff?
Extraordinarily eloquently. And you know what's funny about this game? The most hardest and strongest and toughest among us can all be broken down into tears and emotion through these horses, and what racing does to the soul. It's amazing. I can only imagine what Mr. Bacharach felt when just the whole situation there, just the whole midnight sky and the electricity, and you're on the other side of the world, and the stories of the Arabians that we read as children, and all of a sudden you're in the midst of all this, and to see an event take place like that with Cigar and your horse, I can only imagine the emotions that went through his mind to bring him to that.
Yeah, well, it was joyful for me because it was just I mean, there was a little bit of a patriotic streak as well. Americans finishing first and second like that, but it was a real a glorified moment for the breed and for the sport itself. Truthfully, though, I have only cried after one race in my life. And that was when my wife won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies on Half Bridled. And, those of you that understand what tears of joy are like, you can understand how I felt that day. I knew I'd be embarrassed. I knew I would do something if she won. So I went all the way to the top of the stretch in at Santa Anita there during that 2003 Breeders' Cup. And Julie, of course, riding Half Bridled. And I was right there at the top of the stretch where I could almost hear Jerry Bailey go, "Oh shit," because at that point Julie cut Half Bridled loose, and Jerry, I think he was riding the great Pletcher horse. Anyway, filly. Anyway, she just left him, and that was that. And it was overwhelming. And I was kind of glad I was alone down there.
Oh man, I remember that day so well. And she broke out of the 11 hole. Was it 11 or 10?
14.
Hole? 14.
Wow.
Incredible.
14 of 14. Yeah.
14 of 14.
I think that's why we got 3-1.
That's right. And the smoky skies of the fires that were raging in the background.
Yeah, that was pretty. We had some bad weather that week. We had some forest fires, but that comes with the territory in California.
Comes through the territory. That's right. Wow.
That is so cool. And, I wanted to talk about Julie and your guys' relationship and how you guys met. And one quick note about that: one of our Breeders' Cup horses, Blues the Standard, she rode him to victory. She started his whole journey to the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what was that like when you had? I was too much of a little guy to remember everything, but
so I've always loved Julie. I think I've loved Julie before Jay Hovdey loved Julie.
Possibly, yeah.
It's funny because
a lot of guys did. I don't know how I got to the head of the line.
Well, what's funny was in our first Breeders' Cup with Bud Royale at Gulfstream, Julie was covering the horses all week long, and I remember her saying, she came up to me and she said, "Jeff," she said, "I just want you to know there is not a horse on this track right now that looks as good as Bud Royale and who's acting as good as Bud Royale." And she said to me, she goes, "Jeff, you're going to win the Breeders' Cup Classic on Saturday." She goes, "He's my pick of the whole card." And I went, "Really?" I said, "Are you serious?" She goes, "I've been watching this horse all week on the racetrack." And she was reporting, I think she was reporting for one of the publications or one of the TV stations.
Right.
And I'll never forget that. So instantly I just fell in love with Julie, and it was so wonderful. And then we fast forward to 2003. And so first off the claim, we claimed Bud Royale for 50,000. I'm sorry. We claimed Blues the Standard for 50,000. And so we're running him back first off the claim. And we had been trying to get Julie on our horses, but she was so in demand. Sometimes it was always tough to get her. But who was her agent at the time? Do you remember, Jay?
Brian Beach.
Brian Beach. Oh. That's right. So Brian came by, and he had heard from Bob Meldal, who was Lafitte Pincay's agent at the time. And Lafitte had to ride another horse in the race. And Brian knew about that. But Brian came down to the barn and he said, "Look, Julie really wants to ride Blues the Standard for you guys." So we were thrilled. We said, "Oh, absolutely, that's fantastic." So Julie jumped on, and Blues the Standard just blew the doors off that field. He ran so fast. I think he ran the fastest 3/4 of a mile at Santa Anita in like 3 years at that time. And she just went off for fun. And we were so happy. I remember asking Julie in the paddock, I said, "Where's the best part of the racetrack to be in?" And she said, in front. And then unfortunately she had her issue there where she got hurt, and she wasn't able to ride Blues after that. But her ride on Blues started the role that we had that ended up with Blues on the same card as Half Bridled in the Breeders' Cup
Right.
that year.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
How cool is
Yeah.
that?
Well, you buried the lead about Bud Royale, though. I mean, if he'd beaten Cat Thief that day, she was in line for a big part of a big pick six, and
Yeah.
my dowry would have been a lot better. So thanks a lot, you guys.
Oh, that's hysterical. I remember that pick six. You know, they refer to that, Jay. It's funny that day.
Pete Rose.
In Pete Rose's book, they say of all of rest his soul, Pete, of all of his gambling antics, he said the biggest score that he had was betting Bud Royale in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I think he had him in the exactos to Cat Thief. He had him across the board. He made a fortune that day.
Oh, good. I'm glad someone did.
Oh, that. Well, you know, Jay, just bringing it back to your writing, I never asked you this question, but the book you did on Charlie Whittingham is considered the greatest biography in horse racing. And I was just curious, how did that come to fruition? What was that journey like to write that book? And what was your relationship with Mr. Whittingham? How did that work to be able to write such a wonderful biography?
Yeah, well, I hope our audience, our friends and guests tonight know a little bit about Charlie Whittingham. He was certainly the preeminent California-based trainer of the second half of the 20th century. There was really no number two. And we're talking about a field that included Bobby Frankel and Laz Barrera and Ron McAnally and Gary Jones. So anyway, well, I'd known Charlie since I came around the racetrack as a very wet behind the ears publicist. My first real experience with Charlie was in the preseason before the 72-73 meet, I guess it was, whatever. And I'm talking about right out of college. And I was assigned to take Charlie Whittingham to a Rams game at the Coliseum because they were honoring local sports personalities with a drive around the track at the Coliseum, waving at the crowd and from the back of a convertible. Okay, fine. My job was to get Charlie there and get him home. Got him there. On the way home, Charlie said, "You hungry?" I said, "Sure, I could eat." So we stopped into one of the great racetrack restaurants called the Talk of the Town, which was fronted by a Hall of Fame jockey named Ralph Neves at the time. And this was Charlie's kingdom. This was his throne. This was where Charlie was the man. So he walks in, the water's part, we sit in his booth. I feel like a flea on Forgo. I mean, my insignificance has never been greater. But Charlie was great. It helped that we were both born in San Diego, a couple of San Diego boys, although he was born out in the sticks in Chula Vista, and I managed to, find a hospital for my birth. But so anyway, so we order our steaks. Charlie's having his martinis. Steaks come. Charlie's not ready to eat. Sends them back. I'm going, what world am I living in now? We finish dinner, head for the bar. Charlie has a few more martinis. We're talking about he's absolutely stone cold sober. I don't know which leg is hollow, but it is. And at this point, he's raising up his shirt and challenging people to hit him in the stomach. Okay, that was good. I got him home. I don't know what condition he was in the next morning, but he was out there way before I was. And I think he kind of liked me ever since then. Years and years later, after we'd been through a lot of good horses together, me as a journalist, his wife Peggy said, we need a book about Charlie, and we'd like you to write it. So the Blood Horse agreed to publish it. I picked up a stack of scrapbooks about 5 feet tall that Peggy had kept of Charlie through the years, and went to writing. And it was a great experience. It was truly a privilege to record his history, because it was literally the history of the second half of the 20th century in horse racing.
Just absolutely incredible. I mean, I don't know if you want to.
It was amazing to be able to like what I found so crazy about that, being a kid, and of course you hear these names and being away from where all the action was, and when you finally get there, and it was almost like walking with the mythological figures of Greek mythology. Like you're walking around in a ball, and you see all these people. And as I'll never forget, my dad had Mr. Prime Minister running one day, and I was all of 9, I think, or so, and I'm sitting in the box, and Charlie Whittingham walked in front of me, and of course he's so imposing. He's big, and that big bald head, and he walked by, and everything that you hear, and of course there's no internet or nothing like that. It's just stories that you hear. And so my dad would always talk, because Buster Milrick and my dad were, they were as close as peas and carrots. And so my dad would always talk about stories about these guys and Charlie and Buster and all the rest of it. So the first time I actually made it down, and I was old enough to really kind of somewhat know what was going on. And then I see him walk in front of our box at Santa Anita. And it was a complete situation of when it was like seeing a teacher. For me at the time, it was like seeing your teacher outside of school. It was like, oh my God, like here he is. And there was there was a glow about him. Like there's just some legends, they're just different. There's just something you can't explain. You just have to see it. And I'll just never forget, there was just sort of a glow around him. And it wasn't just him. It was everybody around. And in those days, the boxes were packed, and there's all these celebrities and everybody. And it was the reaction of everybody around when he walked in. Like he literally changed the environment wherever he went. And he never had to say too much. And I thought that was my experience with him. My first experience is that, this man is an absolutely a living legend, an icon. And it was incredible. Yeah.
Well, he had that effect on a lot of people. And I certainly tried to convey that in the biography, but Charlie was he was a pretty regular guy and still being, I mean, he was a Marine, Guadalcanal, cheap steak tough. I mean, and profane, and just, I mean, I had 3 or 4, well, more than 3 or 4. I had a couple of the most interesting memories about him was how he could be a fan of other people. We were signing his book at the Preakness the year that it was published, and we were down in the clubhouse area near a gift shop, sitting at a table, and I looked up, and there's people coming through pretty steadily, and there was a lovely older lady in a print dress with a purse, and waiting patiently to get Charlie Whittingham's not mine, but Charlie Whittingham's signature on his biography. She comes up, and Charlie stands up, goes around the table, Jane, and hugs, and it's Jane DuPont Lunger, Gopher Wands owner, who was waiting for her turn to see Charlie Whittingham. And,
my God.
It's like, okay, well, birds of a feather. That's pretty cool.
What was the story about Burt Baccarat when Burt tried to?
Oh, that was legendary. Yeah. Well, the great story. Well, Burt and Charlie were like this a lot. It was pretty funny. They worshipped each other. But when Burt said one time to Charlie, my horses haven't been running too well lately. Maybe they should be wormed. And a little bit of knowledge being dangerous, Charlie says, well, Burt, you haven't had too many hits coming out of that piano lately. Maybe we ought to worm that. Bert never said another thing for their entire relationship together.
That's
As a
almost
matter of fact, Bert, Charlie loved Bert so much that the morning after he won the Arlington Million with Perot in 1982, his first $1 million race. He flew back to California that night, but he played pretty hard both before the flight, during the flight, and then didn't get up until like dawn for a change. And everybody was really worried about Charlie, because usually he's there at like 4 o'clock, reads the newspaper, makes his rounds, and then starts to train. No Charlie. He was in the ocean sobering up with Burt Bacharach. Now that's a song.
Yeah, that is some story. There was another story that was interesting. I remember hearing when I was younger, when Bobby Frankel, a young Bobby Frankel, an upstart out of New York that decides to come to Southern California and get into his craft, and he had a horse that just wouldn't stop getting out, and nobody could figure this out, and he finally walked over to Buster Milrick's barn, Hall of Famer, thanks to you, Jay. Buster Milrick. He walks over to Buster Milrick's barn, and he tells Buster the problem that he's having, and then Buster rigged together that a bridle for him, wasn't it? The bit for him.
Yeah.
How did that story go?
Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, Buster Millerick had all manner of strange contraptions. He was a seat of the pants kind of horseman. Grew up in Petaluma, and just had never known anything but horses, and handling them all his life. He had a cabinet full of unmarked vials and bottles that you don't want to know what was in there, but none of it tested. So it had to be every homeopathic known to man at that time. But yeah, he rigged up he had a bit that he had used on a horse that had a real severe problem of leaning out, and this bit would discourage the horse from doing that. It was probably a little, let's just say, irritating. I don't want to say painful, because horses, they won't go after pain if they can avoid it. And so this bit was just enough to keep the horse straight, and became a stakes winner for Bobby. And of course, Bobby never forgot it. Buster also had a 3-legged dog that you didn't want to go into the tack room alone with ever.
Buttermilk.
Yeah.
He terrified me as a child.
Oh man, that was something. Yeah.
Oh,
Believe her name. I believe she was fondly named Bitch. That's basically what Buster called her.
I one thing that I was reading up on today, and we've talked about, is you were a staff writer for the HBO series Luck, and I was just curious. I want to give time for everybody to ask their questions, but during the Q&A, I just am curious, what was that like to be a part of a HBO series where they filmed it in your backyard? We actually have a Daniel Hoffman. I don't know if he's related to Dustin, but no relation there. But I was just curious what that experience.
There's Dan. Hi, Dan. Well, Kevin, that was being on a writing staff with David Milch, the guy that gave us Deadwood, the guy that gave us NYPD Blue. It was, I consider it kind of my finishing school as a writer, because we had to produce, but he was also a great teacher for his writing staff. And you just you brought what you could, and created the scenes that David wanted you to create during the course of the that one season that we were privileged to get on the air. And you took your criticism very, very positive ways. And if nothing else, I got to spend time with Nick Nolte, just hanging out with him and talking movies, which was a thrill all unto itself. But working for David was probably the highlight of my writing career, and I'll never forget it, and always be grateful to him for that.
That's fantastic.
I didn't win an Emmy, but that happens. I was a rookie.
Well, there might be another opportunity here down the line for you on something like that. But it was funny. I remember just recently, there's not many people that can make my dad cry. And it's usually Bud Royale and you, Jay. And me and Jay, it's funny, everyone, we were sitting at the box, and he handed me this, and he said, well, why don't you give that to your dad to start reading? So we started to read what Jay had wrote, and all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I looked at Jay, I said, Dad's pretty quiet over there. He's like, yeah. So we look over there, and he takes off his glasses. We just see tears going down. And I look to Jay, I said, I guess that was some pretty good writing. And no, seriously, Jay, I want to give everybody a chance to, have their Q&A with you, because it's not every day that we get to have a living legend with us, Hall of Famer. But I just want to say thank you so much for the way you are able to capture horse racing in its raw natural state, and to be able to tell a story that moves people, moves grown men that have been through things, and you're able to make them find some of the most emotional parts of themselves. And I'm just so grateful that I know you not only as a writer, but as a friend, and just so grateful that you're in my life, and that you took the time out to talk to us, and your stories are just nothing short of incredible. And I just really wanted to tell you how much it means to me and how much I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Of course, now your job is to make sure that claim to fame and your investors give me a reason to write something pretty spectacular about your endeavor.
Yes, sir. 100% we will. 100%. I have truly, Jay, these people in this syndicate, I can't tell you how much I really feel like this is a horse racing family. Like, everyone has been so incredible. Every single one. I just really am so excited for the 2026 season. But on that note, if anybody has any questions to ask Jay, just click the little raise button, and you can get your question going here. If any, Julie, do you have a question, Julie Hansen, Miss Hansen? Maybe.
Yeah, this is not Julie. Hey, Jay, this is Scott Hansen. I was a sports writer at the Seattle Times, covered horse racing for more than 2 decades. Watched Mr. Prime Minister, watched Bud Royale. Like, what I want to ask you about was, I've seen many, many horse races over my career as a horse racing writer, and I appreciate everything you did. You're a great writer. I think the most impressive race I ever watched was the 1997 King's Bishop, when Julie rode Tail of the Cat. Do you remember that race, and what are your thoughts about that race?
Yeah, well, of course, that would have been going on during Del Mar, so we didn't pay much attention to Saratoga out here in California. But I tell you, the reverberations of that race went across the country when we heard, not because Julie Cronin rode it, because that was such a spectacular piece of work on the part of Tail of the Cat. I think he came out of, I think he had just run in the Haskell before that. Mm-hmm. And I saw him run in the Haskell. I went back to cover that race, and that was same year as I guess Silver Charm and Free House. So Free House was there, and I think one of the real good horses was the winner. Anyway, so yeah, that was a spectacular race. It was otherworldly. I think if I recall, Tom Durkin almost fell out of the booth when he saw the half mile. It was 43 and something, wasn't it?
No, it was ridiculously fast, and he never stopped.
Yeah, and he didn't stop. Julie had been in on the ground floor of that colt's development. I mean, she was a close friend, a dear friend of John Forbes, the trainer, and she'd been breezing him since before he started, even. So she knew every little hair on that horse's body, and she wasn't surprised. He did what he did, but she was more like the proud older sister who saw her little brother graduate with honors at the top of the game that day.
Well, I got to tell Julia, she came out to Emerald Downs several years ago, I think for a mile day, and I told her, I said, of all the races I've seen, that's the one that still stands out to me. Because horse runs 133 or 138. I can't always tell the difference. That day at 7 furlongs, whatever horse that horse, I could tell the difference. That horse was running faster than I've ever seen a horse in my life.
Yeah, and you're probably right. And at that distance too, it really separates them. So,
Yeah.
oh boy, I'm glad you were able to convey that to Julie, and I bet she appreciated it too.
That was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate it. And actually, Dad, Scott told me a story how he watched your dad's horse in the mile, and then you win the mile. It's a cool thing to see. So.
Oh man, oh, that's very special.
Well, the funny thing was, Bud Royale kept running these. He was running these, high claiming races, and always had these great speed figures. And I always thought, why is this horse running in these claiming races? I mean, this horse is too good. I mean, he was one of my favorite horses, and you claimed, and obviously he was much better than where he was running at the time. But he kept running these crazy grid races, and I couldn't understand why he was in claiming races. Yeah, obviously, he shouldn't have been.
Yeah, well, the thing about we claimed him off of a bad race on the turf. That's kind of how I got Blues the Standard too. We're giving away all my secrets here. But the thing about him was that horses have issues, and when he was younger, he just had some issues that crop up on you. They go through a lot, on that Derby trail or against those horses, and they go through a lot. And so sometimes it's just that we were lucky to get Bud at a time where a lot of issues that horses get, he got them, and we were able to kind of get going with in a scenario where he went through the tough parts of the rapids, and we had some clear sailing. So we were just lucky to be in the right place at the right time.
Well, it was awesome watching him win the mile. That was pretty darn cool.
Oh, thank you, Scott. Yeah, it's funny. It's a tough ship from Southern California, and because they're all at Del Mar, so they got a van to LAX, and they got to jump on a plane, and they got to go to Oakland, sit on the runway for 3 hours, 4 hours, then fly up to SeaTac and then Van Emerald. It's hard on a horse. Like, it's really hard. And he didn't eat a single oat the entire time he was there. And my trainer Ted West at the time, like I looked at him all the time because he knew how the year previous he just didn't take to the track. It didn't work out. I thought it was a destiny for me never to win the race. It was just never going to happen. And so when the following year, coming off of the bad race at Del Mar after he should have beat Real Quiet in the Gold Cup, and I was sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, like, is this going to be another one of those things? Because I'd get there first thing in the morning and nothing was eaten. And then I'd ask the groom in the afternoon. He said, no, hasn't eaten. I said, is he drinking? And he goes, yeah, a little bit. And so going to the mile that day, and Jay Hovdey was there that day. He was in Seattle covering the mile that day. And I don't know what it was, but his heart, like that was a tough horse that ran second, but his heart that day brought him to the wire. I really believe this is the whole spiritual part of racing that you can't script for. That Mrs. Genter winning the Derby with Unbridled, all those kind of things were just things seem to just have to happen. Derek Jeter's walk off that day in his last game, this was the same kind of thing. He was able to run on sheer heart alone and win that day. It was moving. I still think about it.
Of course, the alternate theory is that the horse hated it there so much he ran as fast as he could to get home to California.
and that is probably the more appropriate way of thinking about it too.
Just putting it out there,
Well, I'm glad that was. I didn't cover the mile that year, and I'm glad I didn't, because I'm sure Jay would have done a much better job than I ever could have.
Oh no!
It was a lot of fun.
Everyone that's involved with racing, they bring an angle to the sport. That's what's so beautiful about it, is that there's so many different lenses to look at it from, and but it all captures the romance in any event.
Oh no! Our dog sitter just got here, and our dog's gonna start barking. I know it, but
oh boy!
But Brad, if you wanted to ask your question, you go right ahead, my friend.
Hi, Brad.
Brad, I think you might be muted, my friend, still. Brad,
Better?
oh, there you are. There you go, pal.
All right. Hey, being in my upper years now, I'm around in my early 60s, seeing what Mike Smith is doing, still riding, these big races and going to be in the Derby. I'm so happy. I mean, that's just amazing. I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Oh, Mike is amazing. He's a real he's a little bit superhuman. There's two things about Mike that really have kept him going like this. He hasn't been seriously injured since his terrible back injury in the late 90s. And he has he rehabbed himself without surgery and took the time to strengthen the muscles around his spine, and really has got that very serious, possibly career-ending injury behind him a long time ago, 25 years or more. And since then, he really hasn't had, he's, knock on all the wood you can find, he's been very fortunate. Now, of course, he doesn't ride as much as he used to, so his percentage of getting hurt is lessened. He rides only, selected horses for selected owners and trainers. But he keeps himself incredibly fit. I did a story a few years back about how he and Alex Solis and Gary Stevens, three senior riders, were still keeping themselves in shape to ride. Well, since then, of course, Gary and Alex have both retired and Mike is still going. This is 10 years ago. Yeah. So he's got a great fitness trainer. He takes it very seriously. He's married to a beautiful, much younger woman. I don't know if that has something to do with it or not, but it certainly has inspired artists in the past. And he,
older.
Yeah, and he's got a great attitude, and he's got the kind of skill set that that works for any horse, because he has very quiet hands. He can anticipate well. He's very much one with the horse. He doesn't kid himself when he's had a bad ride, or when the horse has done something a little bit out of sync. And age is just a number to guys like him. I mean, we've seen it before, but not too often. Yeah. Shoemaker was what, 54, 55 when he won the Kentucky Derby, and raced for another 3 years after that. So they're a very special breed when they get to that point in their lives, and they're still able to really contribute to their patrons like Mike is.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And he's only 59, by the way.
Oh, see,
yeah, because the deal is he had to finally fess up this past summer, because everybody had been reporting that he's going to turn 60. But when he was 15, it was in the springtime. He has an August birthday. So what his uncle did, who was kind of his sponsor and mentor, starting a riding career, he was 15, and the summer was approaching for the circuit in New Mexico. So his uncle took his birth certificate, and you know how a 6, if you erase a little piece of the back of the 6, it kind of can look like a 5. And that's what they did. And so he was born in 1965 instead of 1966. So he'll be an official 60 this summer.
All right. That's cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad, for your question. Well, if there's no other questions, let's see a quick second here from no other questions. No hand raised. All right. Well, I think that's that for the question.
Kevin, just 1 second. I have a prop I want to share with your investors. This is something they're going for, and whether it's your local championship, your state championship, your regional championship, or a national championship, try to win one of these.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
This is what the Eclipse Award looks like. Everybody, put it in your mind, imprint it. That's the horse. And if you stick with good advisors, good counsel, and hopefully Kevin will become one of those in your lives, I think you're going to have a real good time. And gosh, the sky's the limit.
Jay, that means the world. And gosh, thank you so much, Jay. I can't thank you enough. I mean, you inspire me every single time we have a chat. I always feel inspired. I always feel like there's a fire underneath me that wants to get going. And I can't thank you enough for that. And I know everyone here is so thankful and appreciative of you spending the hour with us. Truly, it means so much to me, man. So Jay, thank you so much for what you're doing for me, the investors, and what you've done for horse racing in general. We can't thank you enough.
Well, it was my pleasure, Kevin, and everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
Good luck.
Thanks, Jay.
All right, everybody. Bye now.
Bye. Good night.
Night, night.